3 days before I was supposed to sign the biggest business deal of my life. I walked into my own office at 11 at night and found my best friend of 12 years in a situation I still can't fully describe without my hands shaking. My laptop had been left at work. That was it. That was the whole reason I turned the car around on the freeway, drove back downtown, used my key card to get into the building. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just a guy who needed his laptop because he had a pitch deck to finish before morning. The office was dark except for the light in the back conference room. The one we called the fishbowl because of the glass walls. I remember thinking that was strange. Because I was the last one to leave at 7 and I'd locked up myself. I remember thinking maybe the cleaning crew had left a light on. I pushed open the door, and my whole life split in two. My business partner of 6 years. The man who had co-founded Hartwell & Cross with me from a shared apartment. The man who had been my best friend since our first week at Michigan. Was sitting at our conference table with my fiancée. And the way they scrambled apart when they heard the door tells you everything you need to know about what I had just interrupted. Her name was Alicia. We had been together for 4 years. The wedding was in 3 months. His name is Donovan Cross. His name is still on the door of that building, which is something I still think about sometimes when I can't sleep. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I've thought about that a lot since then. Why I didn't explode the way people do in movies. I think it's because my brain genuinely could not process what my eyes were seeing. There was a delay, like bad satellite signal, between the image and the emotion. I just stood in the doorway with my hand on the glass. And I looked at the two of them, and neither of them said a word for what felt like a very long time. It was Alicia who finally spoke. She said my name, just my name like a question. Like she was surprised to see me in my own office at 11 o'clock. I turned around and walked back out. I drove home in a kind of fog. I sat in the parking garage of our apartment building for 40 minutes without getting out of the car. I just sat there with the engine off, and the radio on, and some late-night host talking about something I will never remember. And I tried to figure out if what I had just seen was real. It was real. By the time I went upstairs I had already made one decision. I was not going to blow up my life publicly. Not yet. I needed to think. I needed to be sure about what I was going to do before I did anything. Because I had a business, I had investors, I had employees whose paychecks depended on what happened next. This wasn't just a personal catastrophe. It was a professional one too. Alicia came home around 1 in the morning. I was sitting in the dark in the living room when she walked in, and she stopped when she saw me. She said she could explain. I told her to go ahead. She sat across from me and she talked for almost 2 hours, and what it boiled down to was, it had been going on for 7 months, she didn't know how it happened, she loved me. But she had also developed feelings for him. She was confused, she was sorry, she had been trying to end it. 7 months. I had been planning a wedding during 7 months of this. I had taken her to meet my parents in Scottsdale. I had gone ring shopping with her sister. I had argued with her about centerpieces, and whether we needed a photo booth at the reception. During all of that, she had been meeting my best friend in parking garages and hotel lobbies, and apparently, on at least one occasion. In the office I had built with my own hands. I asked her one question. I asked if Donovan knew about the wedding date. She said yes, he had known for months. I told her I needed her to leave. She asked where she was supposed to go. I told her I didn't know and that it wasn't my problem anymore. She cried. I sat there while she packed a bag, and I did not move from that chair. Donovan called me at 6:30 the next morning. I stared at his name on my phone screen and let it ring. The thing about having a business partner is that you can't just disappear. We had a company. We had employees. We had a deal worth $2.3 million, closing in 72 hours with a logistics firm out of Nashville. I had to show up. I had to sit across from this man and pretend to function. I did exactly that for 3 days. I want to be honest about this part, because I think it matters. I did not tell anyone what happened. Not my parents, not my friends, not our investors. I made a calculated decision to close the deal first, and then deal with everything else. That might sound cold. At the time it felt like the only rational thing in an irrational situation. I had people depending on me. I was not going to let one man's betrayal cost 13 employees their jobs. So I showed up on Monday morning, with coffee and a clean shirt, and I sat in that conference room. The same conference room, the same table. And I ran the pitch meeting. Donovan sat 4 feet away from me, and I didn't look at him once unless I had to. After the clients left, our operations manager said, it was the best presentation we'd ever done. She said we had real chemistry. I almost laughed. The paperwork was signed on Wednesday afternoon. The funds cleared escrow the following Tuesday. The moment I got the wire confirmation, I forwarded it to our attorney, and told her to start the partnership dissolution process. Donovan got served with the dissolution notice on a Thursday. He called me 14 times that day. I answered on the 15th call. He said you can't do this. I said I already did. He said he was sorry. He said it was a mistake. He said it hadn't meant anything. Which is an interesting thing to say about something that apparently lasted 7 months, and involved multiple hotel rooms and my own office. And according to Alicia in that long conversation we had, at least 3 weekends, when I was traveling for client meetings, and the two of them had essentially been playing house in our shared life. I told him I needed him to understand something. I said, "You weren't just my business partner. You were the person I called when my dad had his heart attack. You were my best man. You've been in every major moment of my adult life. And you looked me in the eyes every single day for 7 months. And you smiled and shook my hand and talked about the future. And you knew, every single day, you knew." He didn't have an answer for that. I told him our attorneys would be in touch and I hung up. The business split was brutal. We'd built Hartwell and Cross from literally nothing. 2 guys in an apartment in Ann Arbor with 1 laptop between us. And a business plan that ran to 63 pages. By the time we dissolved, we had 14 full-time employees, 3 major clients, and assets that needed to be valued and divided. It took 8 months. It cost both of us a significant amount of money in legal fees. I kept 4 of the clients, he kept 2. 7 employees stayed with me and relocated. 7 went with him or found other jobs. I also called off the engagement obviously. That conversation was shorter than you might expect it. Alicia had been staying with her sister in Tempe. We had a 20-minute phone call in which I returned the engagement ring via certified mail, and she did not argue about it. My parents found out about the breakup first. Not about why, just that the engagement was over. My mother cried. My father asked if I was sure. I said I was sure. They were hurt and confused but they didn't push. About 2 months later I told them the truth. The whole thing. I sat in their kitchen in Scottsdale, and I told them everything from the beginning. And when I finished my mother put her hand over her mouth and my father stared at the table and, mindfully stared though nobody said anything for a long moment. Then my father looked up and asked if I had thought about forgiving her. That surprised me. My father is not a soft man. He grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Detroit, and he has always been exactly as straightforward as he looks. So when he asked me that, I genuinely didn't know what to say. He clarified. He said he wasn't saying I should take her back. He said he was asking whether I had thought about forgiveness as something separate from the relationship. For my own sake. My mother didn't agree with him. She said that some things don't deserve forgiveness, and that I shouldn't have to carry the weight of being the bigger person for people who had never once put me first. That kitchen conversation has stayed with me. I think about it more than I expected to. I moved to Austin about 4 months after the dissolution was finalized. I had kept my core team and we restarted under a new name. Hartwell Group. My attorney had been very clear that I was entitled to keep the Hartwell name since it was mine. Donovan Cross lost the cross. It was a small thing but it meant something to me. Austin was a good choice. The tech ecosystem there was growing fast, and we had clients in the energy sector that made the geography make sense. I rented a house in South Austin, near the lake, and I started rebuilding. I hired 2 new people. I took on a contract that would have been too small for us 18 months earlier, and I was grateful for it. I worked a lot. I cooked at home most nights. I ran along the lake in the mornings and I called my parents on Sundays, and I slowly, over the course of about a year, started to feel like myself again. I also met someone. Her name is Vera. She's an environmental attorney. She's funny in a completely dry way that took me about 3 months to fully appreciate. And she has exactly 0 patience for people who waste her time. We met at a mutual friend's dinner party in January of that year, had what started as an argument about a Supreme Court case, and turned into a 4-hour conversation. And went on our first date the following weekend. I told her about Alicia and Donovan on our 3rd date. I figured if she was going to know me, she needed to know that. She listened without interrupting, asked 2 very precise questions, and then said, "That's a significant amount of betrayal for one event." I told her it was. She said, "Okay." And then, she ordered dessert and we talked about something else. I appreciated that more than I can explain. Vera is not a dramatic person. She processes things, she forms opinions, and she moves forward. Being around her during those first years of rebuilding taught me something about the kind of person I wanted to be going forward. Not reactionary. Not carrying old weight into new rooms. 3 years passed. The business found its footing. We landed a contract with a regional healthcare network that tripled our revenue almost overnight. I made 2 new hires who were genuinely exceptional. Vera and I moved in together, into a house we picked out together in Bolden Creek, and for the first time in years I went to sleep most nights, feeling like things were actually okay. Then my father had a second heart attack. He survived. He's still here, but it was bad enough that we almost lost him, and it landed him in the hospital for 12 days. And then in a cardiac rehab program for 6 weeks. I flew to Scottsdale immediately and stayed for the first 10 days. Vera came for the weekend in the middle. My mother held it together the way she always does, which is to say she held it together completely, and then cried, in the car on the way home from the hospital every single night. During those 10 days, I had a lot of time in hospital waiting rooms, and somewhere in a beige chair next to a water dispenser on the third floor of a Scottsdale cardiac unit. I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't open it. It was from Alicia. She had apparently gotten my new number from. And I still have no idea how this happened. A mutual friend who didn't know the full story. The text said she had heard about my father, and she was sorry. It said she hoped I was doing okay. It said she had been thinking about reaching out for a long time and that she understood completely if I didn't want to respond. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I put my phone back in my pocket and went back to the waiting room. I didn't respond. Not that day, not that week. The thing that surprised me was not the text itself. People do things like that. What surprised me was my own reaction to it, which was almost nothing. Not anger, not old grief, not longing, not bitterness, just a kind of flatness. Like looking at a photograph of a place you used to live and feeling very little. Because you have built something so completely elsewhere that the old place doesn't pull at you anymore. About 2 weeks after I got home to Austin, Vera asked me if I was okay. Not about my dad who was improving but about me specifically. She had noticed I was quiet. I told her about the text. She listened. She asked if I wanted to respond. I said I didn't think so. She said that sounded right to her. She said, "It sounds like you've already done the work." I thought about my father in that kitchen in Scottsdale, asking me if I'd thought about forgiveness. And I realized I hadn't forgiven Donovan in the way you forgive someone and let them back in. But I had stopped carrying it. Somewhere between the dissolution and the move and the work and Vera and the Sunday morning runs along the lake, I had just put it down. Not because they deserved it. Because I was tired of the wait. Donovan I heard about through the industry. Hartwell and Cross had fully dissolved by then. He had started something new, from what I understand. And it hadn't gone well. I don't know the details, and I haven't looked for them. I do know he's no longer in Austin, because someone mentioned seeing him in Phoenix at a conference. And I noted that information with the same flatness I'd felt reading Alicia's text. I thought maybe that was the end of it. Then, about 6 months ago, I got a phone call from an area code I recognized as my hometown outside Detroit. It was Donovan's mother. She had gotten my number through my mother, who apparently didn't know why she was calling. She told me that Donovan was going through a hard time. She didn't elaborate much, but the shape of it came through anyway. The business hadn't just struggled, it had failed. There were debts, and she said quietly that he was in a bad place emotionally. She said he had asked her not to call me. She said she was calling anyway, because she remembered who we used to be to each other and she thought if there was any chance I might be willing to talk to him, even just once, it might help him. I told her I was sorry to hear that, I meant it. I also told her I didn't think I was the right person. She thanked me for picking up. There was a pause before she said goodbye. And in that pause I heard 20 years of history. Childhood sleepovers and high school science fairs and college roommate weekends. And all the years of building something together. And then she said goodbye and I said goodbye and the call ended. I sat with that one a little longer than the text from Alicia. Here's the truth. I don't hate him. I'm not sure I hate Alicia either. What they did was a genuine betrayal, not a small mistake, not a momentary lapse, but a sustained and deliberate choice to deceive me while I was standing right there trusting them. That is not something I minimize. That is not something I will ever pretend was okay. But I am also 36 years old. I have a business that I built from the wreckage of what they left me. I have Vera, who is sharper and funnier and more honest than anyone I have ever known. I have a father who is recovering, and a mother who still calls me every Thursday. I have a team of people I genuinely respect. I have a life. And I have come to believe, slowly and without any great epiphany, that the most powerful thing I ever did was not the dissolution, or the move, or even the decision not to respond to Alicia's text. The most powerful thing I did was decide, sometime in the first year in Austin, that what happened to me was not going to be the most important thing about me. I didn't call Donovan back. I didn't respond to his mother's message with anything beyond what I said to her on the phone. But I did call my father that night. He picked up on the second ring. The way he always does, and I told him I had been thinking about that kitchen conversation from 4 years ago. The one about forgiveness. He was quiet for a second, and then he said he remembered. I told him I thought I finally understood what he meant. He said, "Good. That took you long enough." I laughed. For the first time in a day that had been heavy, I actually laughed. Vera was in the kitchen when I got off the phone. She looked up and asked how my dad was. I said he was good. She asked how I was. I said I was better than I'd expected. She went back to what she was doing. I stood there in the doorway of my own kitchen, in my own house, in the city I chose, with the life I rebuilt, and I thought, this is what it looks like when you win, not revenge, not watching someone else lose. Just this, standing in a lit room, feeling okay, having chosen well. That's the part no one tells you. When you're sitting in a parking garage at 11 o'clock at night trying to process the worst thing that's ever happened to you. They don't tell you that the point isn't to destroy the people who hurt you. The point is to build something so solid, so real, so entirely yours, that their names barely register when they come up. I built that. And I'm not going back.